You ever had that one person who only shows up when something's wrong? Like, your phone lights up, you see their name, and before you even open the message, you already know what it's about. It's not, "Hey, how are you?" It's not, "Wanna grab a coffee?" It's a paragraph, a long one. And you already know, this is about to be another emotional dump. So you open it. And yeah, you were right. They're complaining about their job again, or their relationship, or their boss, or their life. Same story, different day. And you're a decent person, so you reply. You don't just give some lazy, "Damn, that's crazy." No, you actually read it. You think about it. You try to understand. You send back something thoughtful. Maybe you could try this. Have you thought about doing that? I think the real issue is this. You're actually trying to help. And they respond like, "Yeah, you're right. That makes sense. Thank you. I really needed that." And for a moment, you feel good. You feel useful. You feel like you did something right. But then, a few days later, they're back. Same problem, same complaints, same emotions. Like the last conversation never even happened. And now, you're sitting there thinking, wait, didn't we already talk about this? Didn't I already give you a solution? Didn't you say you agreed? So what happened? And here's where it gets even more confusing. Sometimes, when you try to go a little deeper, when you actually try to be honest, they don't like it. You say something like, "Maybe you're part of the problem." Or, "If this keeps happening, maybe you need to change something." And suddenly the vibe shifts. Now they're defensive. Now they're quiet. Now they're acting like you don't get it. And you're like, hold on. I just spent all this time listening to you, trying to help you, and now I'm the bad guy? So what are you supposed to do then? Just sit there and nod? Just say, "Yeah, that sucks," every time? Because if you give real advice, they don't take it. If you tell the truth, they don't like it. And if you say nothing, then what's even the point of the conversation? And this is the part nobody really tells you. A lot of people, they don't come to you because you're smart. They don't come to you because you have good solutions. They come to you because you listen. Because you don't interrupt. Because you don't judge. Because you respond. Because you're available. And slowly, without even realizing it, they become your go-to place. Not for growth, not for change, but for release. You become the place they go to unload everything they don't want to carry. And at first, it feels like connection. It feels like trust. It feels like you matter. But over time, it starts to feel heavy. Because it's always about them, their problems, their stress, their emotions. And you're just there holding it. And the weirdest part is, you might not even notice it happening at the beginning. It creeps in slowly. One conversation, then another, until one day you realize you don't even want to open their messages anymore. Not because you hate them, but because you already know how it's going to make you feel. Drained. Let's clear something up right away. Most people who come to you with their problems are not looking for solutions. Yeah, I know that sounds a bit harsh, But if you've ever been in that situation we just talked about, you already know it's true. Because think about it. If someone really wanted to solve a problem, what would they do? They would try something, anything. They would test your advice. They would come back and say, "Hey, I tried what you said. This worked, this didn't." There would be movement. There would be progress. But that's not what usually happens, right? What actually happens is this. They come to you. They tell you everything. You listen. You respond. They feel better. And then, nothing changes. Until the next time they feel bad again. And then, the cycle repeats. So what's really going on? Here's the truth most people don't want to admit. They're not coming to you for answers. They're coming to you for emotional relief. That's it. You're not a problem solver in that moment. You're an emotional outlet. You're like a pressure valve. Their stress builds up, their frustration builds up, their anger builds up, and they need somewhere to release it. So they come to you. Not because you can fix it, but because you can absorb it. And once they've said everything out loud, once they've been heard, once they feel understood, they feel lighter, even if nothing in their life has actually changed. And this is where it gets tricky. Because from your perspective, you think the goal of the conversation is to fix the problem. But from their perspective, the goal is to feel better. Two completely different goals. And when those don't match, that's when frustration starts. You're over here thinking, "Let's solve this." They're over there thinking, "Just understand me." You're giving strategies. They're looking for validation. You're saying, "Here's what you should do." They're hearing, "So you think I'm doing it wrong." You're trying to move things forward. They're trying to stay emotionally comfortable. And this is why a lot of your advice doesn't land. Not because it's bad, but because it's not what they came for. Let me break it down even clearer. There are usually 3 things people are actually looking for when they come to you like this. First, they want to vent. They don't want to be interrupted. They don't want to be corrected. They just want to talk. They want to say all the things they can't say at work or in their relationship or to the person they're actually upset with. And you're safe, so they unload everything onto you. Second, they want validation. They want to hear things like, "Yeah, that's really unfair. I get why you feel that way. You didn't do anything wrong." Not necessarily because it's objectively true, but because it feels good. Because it protects their current way of thinking. Because it means they don't have to question themselves. And third, this is the one people really don't like hearing. They want justification. They want a reason to stay the same. They want someone to indirectly confirm that they don't need to change anything, that the situation is just bad, that other people are the problem, that life is just like that. Because changing, that's uncomfortable. That requires effort. That means admitting something isn't working. And a lot of people would rather feel better temporarily than go through that. So instead of solving the problem, they manage the emotion again and again, conversation after conversation. And without realizing it, you become part of that system. Every time you listen, every time you validate, every time you soften things for them, you're helping them feel better without actually getting better. And I'm not saying you're doing something wrong. It's human. Of course you want to support people you care about. Of course you don't want to just ignore someone when they're struggling. But there's a difference between support and enabling. And if you don't see that difference clearly, you'll keep ending up in the same situation. Listening, advising, getting ignored, feeling drained. Over and over. And here's the part where it turns back to you. Because now the real question is, why you? Why do these people keep coming to you specifically? Why do you keep getting put in this role? Because not everyone does. Some people almost never deal with this. They don't get long emotional messages. They don't get pulled into these cycles. So what's different about you? It's not luck. It's not coincidence. It's something about the way you show up. And once you see that clearly, you'll understand that this situation isn't just about them. It's also about you. And that's what we're getting into next. So now we've talked about them, why they come to you, what they actually want, why nothing changes. But now we need to turn this around a little bit. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. This situation is not just happening to you. You're part of it. Yeah, I know, nobody likes hearing that. It's way easier to think they're just draining. They're the problem. They keep dumping on me. And sure, that might be true, but that's only half the story. Because think about it. Why do they keep coming to you? Why not someone else? Why not that friend who's more blunt? Or that person who never replies? Or the one who shuts conversations down quickly? Why you? There's a reason. And it usually comes down to this. You're safe. Not safe in a bad way, but predictable. You respond. You listen. You engage. You don't cut them off. You don't say, I don't have time. You don't make things awkward. You stay. And people notice that, even if they don't say it out loud. Over time, they learn something about you. You're the one who will always be there. And once that pattern is set, it keeps repeating. Not because they sat down and planned it, but because it works. Every time they feel bad, they come to you, they talk, they feel better. Why would they stop? And here's where it gets a bit deeper. A lot of people who end up in this position, the listener, the helper, the always there person, they don't get there by accident. There's usually a pattern behind it. Maybe you grew up being the responsible one. Maybe you're used to keeping the peace. Maybe you've always been the easy person to talk to. Or maybe you just don't like saying no. Because saying no feels uncomfortable. It feels rude. It feels like you're letting someone down. It feels like you're being selfish. So instead, you say yes. You reply. You listen. You stay in the conversation longer than you want to, even when you're tired, even when you're busy, even when you already know where the conversation is going. And over time, that becomes your role. Not because someone forced you into it, but because you kept accepting it. And here's the part most people don't realize. Being a good listener is not the same as having boundaries. You can be kind and still say no. You can care about people and still protect your energy. But if you don't have that line, people will keep crossing it. Not always intentionally, not always in a manipulative way, but simply because there's nothing stopping them. And the more you give, the more it becomes expected. At first, it's thank you for listening. Then, it becomes normal. Then eventually, it becomes assumed. And that's when things start to feel different. Because now, if you don't respond right away, it feels like you're doing something wrong. If you give a shorter reply, they notice. If you don't engage the same way as before, the energy shifts. And you start feeling this weird pressure like, I have to show up the same way I always have. Even if it's draining you. Even if you don't want to. Even if you're starting to resent it a little bit. And that's the moment you need to pay attention to. Because that feeling, that quiet frustration, that hesitation before opening a message, that sense of, I don't have the energy for this right now, that's not random. That's a signal. It's telling you that something is off, not just with them, but with the dynamic. And here's the key point. If you don't change your side of the dynamic, nothing else will change. You can't control whether they take your advice. You can't control whether they grow. You can't control whether they stop venting. But you can control how much access they have to you, how much time you give, how much energy you invest, how much responsibility you take on. And until you see that clearly, you'll keep ending up in the same place, same conversations, same patterns, same exhaustion, just with different people. So no, this isn't just about them using you. It's about you allowing a role that you never clearly defined. And once you understand that, you stop feeling stuck, because now you realize you actually have more control than you thought. But here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Because the moment you start changing this, people will react. Not always in a good way. And that's what most people aren't ready for. Because when you stop being who they're used to you being, it forces them to face something they've been avoiding. And that's where things can get messy. That's what we're getting into next. So let's say you start doing things differently. You don't reply as fast. You stop writing long, thoughtful messages. You don't jump in with advice every single time. Maybe you even say something like, "Hey, I don't really have the energy to get into this right now." Nothing aggressive, nothing rude, just different. And almost immediately, something feels off. The energy shifts. They might not say it directly, but you can feel it. Short replies, delayed responses, a slightly cold tone, or sometimes not subtle at all. They'll say things like, "You've changed. You don't care like you used to. I guess I'll just deal with it myself." And now you're sitting there like, wait, what? All I did was pull back a little. All I did was stop overextending myself. Why does it feel like I did something wrong? And this is where a lot of people panic. Because that reaction, it triggers guilt. It makes you question yourself. Am I being selfish? Am I a bad friend? Should I just go back to how I was? And most people do. They go right back. Back to long replies, back to over-listening, back to carrying conversations they don't even want to be in, just to avoid that uncomfortable feeling. But here's what's actually happening. When you change your behavior, you break the pattern. And when you break the pattern, you break their expectation. They were used to you being available. They were used to you responding a certain way. They were used to you playing a certain role. And now, suddenly, that role is gone. So they don't just lose a conversation partner. They lose their outlet, their place to vent, their place to feel understood, their place to release everything. And that creates discomfort. Not because you did something wrong, but because something they relied on is no longer there in the same way. And instead of processing that, a lot of people react. Sometimes it's subtle. They pull away. They stop sharing as much. They act a little distant. Other times, it's more direct. They'll guilt trip you. They make comments. They try to pull you back into the old dynamic. Not always consciously, not always in a manipulative way, but the intention is the same. Go back to how things were. Because that version of you was convenient. And this is the part that really messes with people. You can spend months, even years, being there for someone, listening, supporting, giving your time and energy. And the moment you stop doing that the same way, you're suddenly the problem. Not because of everything you've done, but because of what you're no longer doing. And that feels unfair.
It feels like none of it counted. But the reality is, it's not that it didn't count. It's that the relationship was built on a pattern, not balance, not mutual support. A pattern. And once that pattern changes, the relationship has to adjust, or it falls apart. And that's the part most people avoid thinking about. Because sometimes, when you stop being the always there person, some people disappear. Not because you hurt them, not because you betrayed them, but because the version of you they were connected to doesn't exist anymore. And that can be uncomfortable to accept. Because now, you have to ask yourself, was this a real connection? Or was it just a role I was playing? And I'm not saying every relationship is like this. But if a relationship only works when you're overgiving, then it's not really working. It's just functioning on your energy. And once you see that clearly, you stop trying so hard to keep it alive in the same way. But here's the good news. This doesn't mean you have to cut people off. It doesn't mean you have to become cold or distant. It just means you need a different way of showing up. A way that doesn't drain you. A way that doesn't turn you into everyone's emotional support system. Because right now, without clear boundaries, that's exactly what's happening. And in the next part, we're going to talk about how to change that. Not in some extreme dramatic way, but in a way that actually works in real life. Because knowing all this is one thing. Actually handling these situations differently, that's a whole different skill.
Now you see what's going on. You understand the pattern. You understand why it keeps happening. You understand why it feels draining. Cool. But here's the real question. What do you actually do about it? Because let's be honest, it's easy to say set boundaries. Everyone says that. But in real life, it's awkward. You don't want to sound cold, you don't want to hurt people, you don't want to turn every conversation into some serious confrontation. So instead, most people just tolerate it. They keep replying, keep listening, keep feeling drained. So let's make this practical. No big speeches, no dramatic, we need to talk. Just small shifts that change everything. First thing, stop responding immediately. This one sounds simple, but it's powerful. If someone sends you a long emotional message, you don't have to reply right away. You're not on call. You don't owe instant emotional labor to anyone. Wait. An hour, a few hours, even a day if you need to. Because the moment you always reply instantly, you train people. You teach them you can access me anytime. And once that expectation is there, it's hard to take it back. So slow it down. Create space. Second, shorten your responses. You don't need to write essays. You don't need to analyze everything they said. You don't need to break down their situation like a therapist. Try this instead. That sounds really frustrating. I get why you feel that way. Yeah, that's a tough situation. That's it. Notice something? You're still acknowledging them, but you're not diving in. You're not taking responsibility for solving it. You're not turning it into a whole session. And here's what happens when you do this. One of two things. Either they move on quickly, or they try to pull more out of you, which brings us to the third point. Stop giving advice unless it's asked for. This is a big one, because a lot of people think they're being helpful by offering solutions, but most of the time, that's not what the other person wants. And when you keep giving advice they didn't ask for, you're doing two things. You're investing energy where it's not needed, and you're putting yourself in a position where they can ignore you. So instead, shift it. If they didn't ask, don't offer. Or say something like, do you want advice or do you just want a vent? Simple, clear, no pressure. And you'd be surprised how many people will say, I just need to vent. Exactly. Fourth, Start setting soft limits. You don't have to go full boundary speech. Just be honest, casually. Hey, I don't really have the energy to get into this right now. I've got a lot on today. Can we talk another time? I hear you, but I can't dive deep into this at the moment. You're not rejecting them. You're just not available in that way. And that's okay. Because right now, the problem isn't that you care too much. It's that you're always available. And finally, this is the most important one. Stop taking responsibility for fixing their life. Read that again, because this is where most people get stuck. You listen, and then you feel like you need to help. You hear the problem, and you feel like you need to solve it. You see them struggling, and you feel like it's somehow on you. It's not. You can care about someone without carrying them. You can support someone without solving everything for them. You can listen without becoming their emotional system. Because at the end of the day, it's their life, their choices, their patterns, their responsibility. And if they don't change, that's not because you didn't try hard enough. That's because they're not ready. And once you really accept that, a lot of pressure disappears. You stop overthinking your responses. You stop feeling guilty for pulling back. You stop trying to get it right every time. You just show up in a way that works for you. And here's the interesting part. When you start doing all this, some people will adjust. They'll respect your time. They'll come to you less often. They'll even start handling things on their own. And others? They'll fade out. Not dramatically, not with some big argument, just less contact. And that's okay. Because what you're left with are relationships that don't depend on you being constantly available, on you being the listener, the fixer, the always there person. And that's a much healthier place to be. But there's one last thing we need to talk about, because this isn't just about other people. It's also about you, about how you see yourself in all of this. Because once you shift that, everything else becomes easier. At the end of all this, there's one thing we haven't really talked about yet. And it's probably the most important part. Because everything we've said so far, about them, about patterns, about boundaries, none of it really sticks until this part clicks. And it's this. A lot of people don't just end up being the listener. They need to be the listener. Yeah, not in an obvious way. Not like you're sitting there thinking, I want people to dump their problems on me. But in a quieter way, a deeper way. You feel useful when people come to you. You feel valued when someone opens up to you. You feel important when you're the one they trust. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's human. We all want to feel like we matter. We all want to feel like we bring something to the table. But here's where it becomes a problem. When that becomes your main role. When your sense of value starts coming from how much you can help, how much you can listen, how much you can carry. Because then, you don't just allow these situations. You unconsciously create them. You reply faster. You go deeper. You give more. Not just for them, but because it reinforces something in you. I'm the reliable one. I'm the strong one. I'm the one people come to. And again, nothing wrong with that. Until it starts costing you. Until you're drained. Until you feel used. Until you start resenting the very people you were trying to help. And now you're stuck in this weird place where you don't want to keep doing this, but you also don't know who you are without it. So you stay in the role, even when it doesn't feel good anymore. And this is the shift, the real one. You have to stop needing to be that person all the time. You have to be okay with not being the solution, with not being the one who fixes everything, with not being the one everyone runs to. Because once you let go of that, everything else becomes easier. Saying "not now" feels lighter. Shortening your replies feels natural. Not giving advice feels normal. You're not fighting yourself anymore. You're just choosing differently. And here's something else that's important to understand. The people who actually want to grow, they won't just disappear because you set boundaries. They might be surprised at first. They might need to adjust, but they'll respect it because they're not just looking for comfort. They're looking for progress. They'll take responsibility. They'll try things. They'll come back with something new. There's movement. But the ones who only come to you to feel better in the moment? Yeah, those ones usually don't stick around. And that's not a loss. That's clarity. Because now you can finally see who's there for a real connection and who is just there for access. And once you see that clearly, you stop taking things personally. You stop feeling guilty. You stop thinking you owe people your time, your energy, your attention, every single time they ask for it. Because you don't. You really don't. And this doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It just means you start choosing where your energy goes. You start protecting your space. You start treating your time like it actually matters. Because it does. And here's the final thing I'll leave you with. If someone truly wants to change, they won't just talk about their problems. They'll do something about them. They'll take action. They'll make mistakes. They'll try again. They won't just keep showing up with the same story over and over again. And if that's all someone is doing, then no amount of listening, no amount of advice, no amount of effort from you is going to fix it. Because it's not your problem to fix. It never was. So don't make yourself into everyone's emotional safety net and then wonder why you feel exhausted all the time. You're allowed to care, just not at the cost of yourself. And once you really understand that, you don't just stop being the free therapist. You start becoming someone who actually has space for their own life.